Another week, another episode. As always, I'm Al. This is the Geek in Review. I'm going to be talking about Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Episode 16, Ghost in the Machine. And yeah, after last week's cliffhanger, not a potentially great one, let's be honest, and a bit of a filler episode if you ask me. I always talk about how I enjoy the pace of this show, and it does feel like this one they let their foot off the gas a little bit, especially with I think it's only 3 or 4 episodes to go. This episode doesn't really move the general story along or give us any real additional backstory on anyone at all after last week's sort of origin ones, which, yeah, I thought was a little weird. They also don't really pick up what's going on in the USS Dauntless with Janeway and the Diviner and stuff as well. So I've got to say I was a little disappointed, but it's still the best Star Trek show on TV if you ask me, so let's get to it. So the episode opens up and it's all go. The gang are battling Romulans and Starfleet, but it's all a holodrill, and this is the 86th time they're doing this scenario, and they're not winning, so I suppose this is their Kobayashi Maru after doing the Kobayashi Maru earlier on in the season. But I do like the fact that it is showing that they are trying to deal with the problem that they've got with not being able to contact Starfleet and how they're going to overcome it. You know, they talk about using different methods, and maybe there's a few other ways they can do it rather than hails. Why not just write it on the side of the ship? But that's just me. And it does all make sense, because when you think about it, their next sort of real Janeway Dauntless based encounter is probably going to be on space, not on a planet where they met her for the first time. So they've got to get this right, and they've got to get it right the first time. It'll be interesting to see what eventually they do, or what happens that they overcome this issue, because it is going to take something away from the show that's keeping these two groups of characters apart. So once they overcome that problem, you know, what's going to stop them going to Starfleet? Because they don't need the ship, they just need themselves. They could just, you know, park the ship off a planet, fly it into a sun and wait there, but I don't see them doing that. I think there's going to be something else here, or something else that's going to come into play in the next few episodes. But as always, we're going to have to wait and see. And I mentioned it in my last review as well, that Dal is feeling a little bit sorry for himself, and he's going back to being a little bit unlikable like he was at the start of the season. But again, this episode doesn't really focus on one character individually, and Dal certainly isn't really getting that much of his share of screen time. And another thing that didn't work for me about this episode is tonally, it does seem like a bit of a shift, that these guys have sort of been on the run and, you know, got to Romulan space and had the adventure with O'Connor and all that stuff, and the tone just seems really different here. It's super light-hearted, and it just doesn't fit with what's been going on since the second half of the first season started. But mysterious things start happening on board the Protostar, and Zero realises that they're still on the holodeck. And yeah, we've seen this happen again and again in Starfleet, from the Next Generation, DS9 and Voyager. It is an old trope, but it can be an incredibly good one creativity-wise. I mean, you're on a holodeck, you can do anything, you can take them anywhere, especially if it's an animated show. So initially, I didn't see it coming because it just came out of nowhere. Like, did anyone else see it? So they're trapped, and they've got to go through a sort of series of missions or quests or problems that they need to solve to get the Arch to appear. Which initially, maybe because it's Knives Out 2, Glass Onions coming out, I was like, oh, this is a murder mystery thing. I suppose that's how they do it for a kids show. And then it occurred to me, I'm overthinking it, it's just an escape room episode. Which is pretty relatable, and a lot of shows have done that the last few years. But the point is, they've got to work together to get out of the situation, and yeah, I love the fact that they do this. They tend to do it every episode, or not every episode, but a good majority of them. And again, it's easy to forget that these characters are essentially kids, so they might not have all the sort of knowledge or logic or common sense that an adult would have to overcome an issue. But there's a twist on a twist on a twist, and it's not just the one holo program they've got to play out where they're fighting the Federation and the Romulans. They're going to have to play through some of the crew's personal programs as well. So we see what Jank and Pog's been getting up to, battling some Tellarites, or at least the one Tellarite, the one that's on board Janeway's ship, because he was a little rude to Pog when they met. And Jank was clearly exercising some bullying demons that he's got to deal with here. Murph lip syncing was fine, I suppose. I didn't expect it. But again, none of this really adds to any of the backstory of the characters. One thing that I did sort of like though is when they're in the bar, Gwen goes to get a drink and it's the diviner that's the barman, so she's got a bit of like that scene in The Shining when Jack is talking to the barman on Doctor Sleep when Danny's talking to his father. I really like that, and I wonder if that was an intentional nod to The Shining. I don't know if it was or that was just me. Did you pick it up? Let me know what you think in the comments below. So all the programmes start merging together, so it's not a murder mystery, it's not an escape room, it's like a Ready Player One, I suppose, if you've seen that episode, and that's sort of it. But it's a very weird episode for a kids show. It's always maintained a level that could keep me interested as an adult, but this is definitely the most sort of kiddie friendly or kiddie focused episode that they've made so far. And it kind of lost me, to be honest. I'm not going too hard on it because the level of quality in this show compared to the rest of the Star Trek that we're getting at the moment is still exceptionally high. So I'm willing to give them a pass for the odd episode that I personally don't enjoy week on week, because it's all part of the one story. So there's going to be little bits that you don't like and things that are added in that might not necessarily work for you as an individual. But looking at this as a whole, once the first season's finished, I'm sure it won't bother me that much. And I know that a lot of people have felt the same about this episode, that it was just sort of meh. But for me, Discovery's always meh. Strange New Worlds is hit and miss at best, and Picard is... Well, you've seen the second season of Picard, you know what that is. But yeah, as I said at the start of the video, my main sort of gripe about this episode is it doesn't move anything forward after last week's cliffhanger. But my main sort of gripe about this episode is it doesn't move anything forward, especially after last week's cliffhanger on the Dauntless. And this was a major letdown for me. Again, it's a kid's show, and they might just be trying to break it up and make it a little bit more fun or whatever. But yeah, I think there's probably more adults than kids watching this, so there's probably a little bit more disappointment in the room or the fan base as a whole. Sort of last 5 minutes in the final reveal of the episode did really work for me. The crew realises that Holo Janeway's actually been working against them because the weapon that's on board has infiltrated her systems. So she's doing a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde thing without realising it. The question is, how long has this been going on for? How long has she been sabotaging the people that she says she's there to help? And what are the crew and the gang going to do about it? I mean, they can't just erase her because they do sort of need her. They might turn her off for a bit, I suppose, because they done it when they were on that episode of the Ice Planet with O'Connor. They were abandoning the ship, so she was ready to get turned off for weeks, days, or months at a time. So if they do turn her off, I think that would be a bit more interesting in terms of them dealing with a situation on their own the next time they run into Starfleet Romulans or whoever. I'll be honest, I don't really see that happening. So although the sort of final reveal did get me back on track in terms of my enjoyment of the episode, that was a hell of a long way and a roundabout way to go and do it. And we learn that while they've been trapped in the holodeck, Holo Janeway has taken control of the ship and delivered it straight towards the Dauntless, aka the real Janeway, who again we've seen absolutely nothing of after last week's cliffhanger. And despite the fact that we have got another great cliffhanger, this has been my least favourite episode of the season so far. I don't know about you, let me know what you think in the comment below. But yeah, I just thought it was a little bit odd that they sort of went on this side holo mission rather than paying off anything that was set up the week before. And there could have been a lot more to this episode, and it could have been executed in a bit of a better or a higher way. But again, it's a kid's show, so you can't really judge it along with the rest of the Star Trek franchise at the moment. But tonally, for me, yeah, I keep saying it, it was all over the place. So while generally this episode didn't really move the story forward apart from the last few minutes, some exciting stuff to look forward to, and we are hopefully going to get some answers. Again, I generally like the pace of this show and the way that it sets things up when it's been paying them off. But what are they going to do when they run into Janeway? How are they going to overcome the communication problems? And how are they going to avoid destroying themselves and Starfleet? Let me know what you think in the comments below if you've made it this far. Please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. My name's Al, thanks for watching.